Hello and welcome to today's Home for Learning student webinar. I'm just going to take you through our agenda for today and then we'll kick off. So we'll just run through our housekeeping. We'll then have a poll which we'll invite you all to participate in. We'll then hear from George Clark, MOBIE founder, and then we will hear from Jerry Raffles, Louise Rogers, and then on to Brian McCarthy, and then we will finish with another poll and a Q&A. So just a bit of housekeeping before we start. So this session will be recorded and will be available to view in a few days. To ask a question, click on the questions in the control panel, type in your question and press send, and we will try to answer as many as we can today. The presentations and information pack is available in the handout section. Please download these before you leave the webinar. So we'll kick off with our first poll. So if we can have the first poll up, please. It's just taking a second. There we go. So which area of the built environment are you interested in? If you could please just select your answer. So we've got architecture, urban design, civil engineering, environmental technologies, and interior design. And we'll just give that a few seconds to let everyone participate. And that's great, and we'll just see the results now. So 6% are architecture today, so that's great to know. And then we've got a few urban designers and also a few in environmental technology. So that's really good to know. Thank you for that. So we'll now move on to a short clip from MOBIE founder George Clark. That was great. So we're now going to hear from Jerry Ruffles first. So Jerry has been with MOBIE since it was set up in 2017. He is their head of education with responsibilities for MOBIE's range of university and college courses, training programs and new education and skills development, as well as their student design challenges and competitions. He joined MOBIE after 25 years in higher education lecturing and running courses in construction and built environment design and architecture. After Jerry, we will then hear from Louise Rogers, who is a researcher at Edinburgh Napier University within the Centre of Off-Site Construction and Innovative Structures. Louise graduated from Edinburgh Napier University with an MSc in Advanced Structural Engineering after the completion of her undergrad degree in Civil Engineering. Louise has recently begun a PhD which looks at the circularity of construction sector with particular focus on the deconstruction and reuse of materials. So first, welcome, Jerry.
Hello and good morning, everybody. And thanks for that introduction, Kirsty. I'm Jerry Ruffles, Head of Education for MOBIE, and you've heard from George that we really are all about innovation, passionate about engaging young people in design and looking at homes for the future. And as you can see in the background of this particular slide from one of our earlier challenges, we kind of always get an incredible response to our challenges, always really impressed by the design and the enthusiasm and just the fantastic material that's produced. And as I said, as George said, we are really excited about this. Is our first challenge in Scotland, the first of many of our hopeful planned opportunities. MOBIE about creating better homes, about the design of better homes, more efficient, sustainable, energy efficient homes, and encouraging and engaging young people to come into the industry. It hasn't got a very appealing image sometimes, and through our courses and our training and educational program, we really want to encourage young people a fantastic career opportunity to shape their brighter futures. As George kind of mentioned, MOBIE, Ministry of Building, Innovation and Education, set up about 4 years ago. George, TV architect, writer, is incredibly passionate about homes and home design, and as he's always saying, home is the most important piece of architecture in our lives, and it crafts how we live, how we grow as families. And it's not just the home, it's about the communities that we create, how we live and where we live. And he started MOBIE really to create a generational shift in home building. This is kind of the shift that we're looking at. We need the shift, new building. Everything looks the same, really, whether you're whichever part of the country you're in. New homes kind of look the same, and you have to ask the question: is this the best we can do? When you look at what else is happening in construction and IT and digital technologies, we could do better. And our feeling is that new homes need not look or be built like this. Really, they look very similar. You could say there's not a lot of character. It certainly doesn't encourage a sense of community. Buyers aren't left with a great deal of choice. They're certainly not affordable. Materials generally pretty traditional, not necessarily sustainable, and not particularly energy efficient. Surely we should and could do better than that. Education, very vital part of what we're about at MOBIE, and we have kind of over the 4 years since we were set up, have developed a range of courses across the board to engage everybody from primary schools up to PhD students. Our course is focusing on obviously design, production, how we're going to build our houses, engaging new digital technologies, looking constantly to the future, very concerned about economics and pricing, and how the construction team is led, and so on and so forth. So our courses feature obviously home design, look at alternative methods, modern methods of construction, off-site construction, future technologies, how we can make these buildings more and more sustainable, developing prototypes, so on and so forth. The MOBIE educational pathway, what we like to call from learning to earning, because at the end of the day, it's all about preparing you for fantastic, richly rewarding careers in construction. We love our competitions and challenges, and they've always engaged young people of all ages. We're developing, in actual fact, launching in Scotland just later this month, a series of educational programs for primary school, particularly just for primary school children, building our futures. Some of our previous challenge winners have helped develop this. And we have nationals and hires from fairly basic entry-level requirements up to HNCs and so on and so forth for College of Further Education. We have degrees, BScs and BA degrees, design for future living and innovative home design. We have masters, postgraduate degrees, MScs, MAs, advanced home futures, off-site design and construction. And at the top of the pile, we have a PhD program for people who want to kind of do some very, very original research into materials or home designs and so on and so forth. But one of the kind of most rewarding and exciting way of engaging with young people has been through our design challenges. We try to run these all the time, and as I said, this is the first one in Scotland. But these challenges really engage people, not just from working together as a team, thinking through and answering a brief, coming up with designs, looking at how these things are going to work, but also then presenting them. And as and when we can, we try to have live presentations when groups and teams come together. They present in front of an audience, and okay, yes, it's a bit nerve-wracking and all this sort of thing, but it stays with them, as we said here. It stays with them forever. It's a great way, and as I say, we love these challenges. Some of our previous challenges have included a modular school building, and we've done student halls of residence. We've had a multi-generational living challenge, and this was an exciting one because it was the brief, which was kind of set by the Construction Innovation Hub, wanted us to look at 3 metre by 3 metre by 3 metre steel pods, all of which could be actually built and constructed by robots, re-looking into the future. A very exciting challenge. Last year we did the Home of 2030, looking ahead 10 years or 8 years now. What sort of homes are we going to be living in 2030, sponsored by the Royal Institution of British Architects. Sunderland, a city and the northeast of England, are really excitingly developing their riverside, and we ran a challenge around the riverside development, urban housing. We've done primary school challenges, and at the moment in London we're running the Design Future London challenge, which is sponsored by the Mayor of London. Got a massive big site on the East London Royal Docks, and it's about homes and landscaping, placemaking, communities. And at the moment, I think we've actually got over a third of schools in London registered to take part. So as I say, challenges are really, really exciting. It's a great way for you to get involved and start to think about careers in construction and really move away from the kind of the image of the cold, nasty old construction site. As and when we can, we like to get out and work with students, whether you're in a school, college or university. We can help with the challenges. We can run short projects. We can offer seminars and crits and webinars. And we would love to hear from you and your teachers if you would like our help with running something like this. We have workshops, masterclasses for schools, and pandemic allowing, George loves to get out and work with kids, drawing classes, design classes, how you could interpret a brief. So that's a little bit about MOBIE. I'll talk a little bit more later on, but now I'll hand you over to Kirsty, who's going to talk about this challenge.
So thanks a lot, Jerry, for that really useful summary on what MOBIE is all about and giving a great introduction into this design challenge. So as Kirsty mentioned, my name is Louise Rogers and I'm a researcher at Edinburgh Napier University looking at how the built environment can be more sustainable. So I'm now going to go over the brief for the project and cover some of the things you might want to consider in your designs. So next slide, please. Jerry, can you move on to the next slide, please? Might be having a technical issue here.
No, I can see, we can see you.
Gary, if it's not moving forward, just go down to the bottom of the presentation again and move it forward from there. That's it. See where the arrows are down the very, that's it.
Right, sorry about that.
It's okay. Okay, perfect, great. So to give an introduction to the project, we want young people of Scotland to work together to imagine ingenious ways our homes can help solve the environmental change that we are facing every day. And so obviously we need some significant radical improvements to meet net zero emission targets and to stop climate change in its tracks. You know, can we start to address these challenges now? We think the answer is absolutely. So MOBIE, Construction Scotland Innovation Centre and the City of Glasgow College are working together with industry support from Scottish Water and Developing Young Workforce Scotland to set a student challenge that aims to raise awareness on the impact the built environment can have on the planet and ways we can reduce the carbon. Okay.
And the slide isn't moving on again. See you, but not the slide, I'm afraid, Louise.
No problem.
Gary, do you want to go just to the bottom again? Just click on your presentation and just you watch it from the presentation screen and click down the bottom. Don't look at Louise.
I think we've just skipped past one. If we just go back one. Perfect. Okay. So I'll now cover the challenge and the brief. So your challenge is to design a sustainable and energy efficient family home that can be used as a showcase and education space for renewable energy, low carbon technologies and new construction methods. So of course, your design must consider the planet. It must be a net zero carbon proposal and be able to be sustainable with the ability to relocate, rebuild, extend and operate. So the construction must use sustainable materials. This could include your natural materials as well as previously recycled materials. The building methods you adopt must minimise waste and your design must offer low running costs, efficient energy and water use. So you should think about how the design and specification of the house can reduce the need for materials and energy and how you can power it through renewable resources. Great, so we obviously want you to work as a team, as collaboration is where real idea generation can come from. So we have 3 submission age groups. This is 11 to 15 years, 16 to 18 years, and then over 19 years. So your submission details, you can provide either a physical or digital entry. We would expect you to have 2 A1 boards showing your designs. You'll likely want to make a model, which you can submit photos of. You don't have to submit the physical copy, but you want to keep this safe in case you are successful in the challenge and we may want to use it later for exhibition. So the submission date is the 8th of June, so you've got a few months to get your ideas together. Your digital entries should be sent to Jerry at MOBIE's Head of Education, and your physical entries can be sent to the City of Glasgow College. Okay, so we'll now move on to a little bit about the site and we'll give you a brief overview on it. So this is a satellite view of the site in which the building will be situated on. It's in the city centre of Glasgow, next to one of the university campuses, I believe. You'll want to take some time to learn about the site, the geometry and the layout. And for example, what are the access roads like? What is surrounding the site? Is it quiet? Is it noisy? These are all things that you'll want to consider. And so the next slides will illustrate the site plan. So the site equates to just under an acre in area. If you're able to, you may want to visit it and take some photos and measurements. You could draw some sketches and take notes of any obstructions such as trees, overhead cables, historic buildings. You may want to carry out a site survey and work out the different ground levels, as this could have an impact on your final design. So finally, moving on to the site illustration. You can see the site has tall buildings next to it. How will this impact your design and your use of, say, renewable energy sources such as solar and wind? As well as this, you'll want to think about how your building looks. Will it complement the surrounding buildings? You obviously want it to be something that if you're looking out from the next door buildings, that it's nice to look at. So I'm going to move on now to talk about some of the things you might want to consider when developing your sustainable designs. So I'm going to cover materials, construction methods, demountability, and green energy. So starting off with materials and material efficiency, it's important to think about the global warming potential of different material types. This is basically the carbon that 1 meter cubed of material results in from its natural resource extraction and manufacture. So the first two examples, steel and concrete, have a positive global warming potential, which means that they add carbon to the atmosphere. Whereas compared to the two materials on the right, mass timber and raw timber, they have a negative global warming potential, which means they do the opposite. They remove carbon from the atmosphere. So when you're trying to design net zero, to net zero, it's really important that you consider the carbon and energy required to make the materials you're planning to use. Similarly, it is also important to think about material efficiency. Now, concrete is often thought as one of the most harmful construction materials to the environment, which is the case. But when reading this slide, you might think that it's actually steel. However, this is where material efficiency comes in. You need less steel than you would concrete to design the same building. Therefore, the volume of concrete would be significantly higher than that of steel, resulting in a higher level of carbon generation. You could say, well, we should always design with timber since it removes carbon, which as a timber engineer, I'm an advocate for. However, it's also good to keep in mind the limitations of timber, such as its structural capacity and material variability due to it being a natural resource. A few things you might want to also consider when choosing materials are the environment you're building in and what the buildings will be used for, as well as the aesthetics. Does it look nice? Does it complement the pre-existing surrounding buildings? And finally, the material availability. Can you source it in Scotland, or will you have to go further afield? These are all really important things to think about that have an impact on your carbon generation of your design. So moving on to construction methods. The brief states that you should look to adopt modern methods of construction, or MMC for short. This is a process which focuses on adopting off-site manufacture and prefabrication. MMC encompasses a number of construction forms. These include panelized, volumetric, components, and hybrid systems. Looking at these in a bit more detail, the panelized construction, which you can see on the top images, involve manufacturing individual wall panels off-site, then transporting them to the site and lifting them into place. These panels can have different levels of completion, where you could have a basic open panel, which would be just the frame and one sheet of OSB, which is completed on-site, or a fully closed panel, which contains all the finishings, such as installation, plasterboard, and even windows, resulting in very little work required on-site to finish the panel. Volumetric is similar to the closed panel system, except the full four-sided module is manufactured off-site, then lifted into place, which you can see on the bottom there. These tend to have the highest level of completion off-site, where the fixtures and fittings, such as bathrooms and kitchens, can be installed in a factory. So I don't have any images of the component systems, but this could be in the form of frames or structural beams, which are fabricated off-site. Finally, hybrid methods can use a combination of the above. For example, you could have a volumetric bathroom, which is then finished on-site with closed panels. These are modern methods of construction, a very efficient way to keep account of it's a lean manufacturing process. So it's really a good thing to think about when you're designing how you will construct your building. So moving on to my slide on demountability. As part of the brief, you are to create a design that can be relocated. Therefore, you have to think about how it can be disassembled and reassembled. Design for deconstruction is not often considered, and therefore the pre-existing examples are limited, so it would be required for you to really think out of the box here. This is where collaborative working will be really useful. Some key considerations that you'll want to think about include using reversible connections, such as screws, bolts, and blocks, which can be easily removed without damaging the surrounding material. I have a few examples on this. The top image is the COP26 demonstrator house, which was designed with the full intention of relocation after COP26. This might be a really good case study for you to look for inspiration. Similarly, the bottom picture utilizes a block system in which the blocks are enable disassembly and reassembly of CLT panels. This house was constructed on the Heriot Watt campus in Edinburgh and then deconstructed and shipped to Dubai for a student competition. When designing for deconstruction and reutilization, you should avoid the use of irreversible connections such as glues and welds. These are virtually impossible to take apart without destroying the surrounding material. Finally, you need to consider the steps that you would take to demount and reassemble. Would you reverse the connection steps, or would you take a different approach? So moving on to my final slide on green energy, it is critical that your design is powered by renewable energy sources. There are now a number of renewable options that you could utilise, not all of which are included here. For example, you could use solar or solar thermal, air or ground source heat pumps, or biomass boilers. You will also have to consider when deciding the system to adopt. What sort of space availability do you have? Heat pumps take up external space and biomass boilers take up internal floor space. So that is something to bear in mind. As well as this, you will have to consider your energy requirements. Will you need more than one renewable source? Is the source you've chosen reliable all year round? For example, is there enough solar resource or do the surrounding buildings have an impact on this? Finally, an energy efficient home, it is vital that you consider ventilation requirements. Can your heat source work in reverse and provide ventilation? These are all useful things that you should consider in your design. So to summarise, I have included a list of references for the things that I've spoken about, as well as some case studies, and particularly on the demountable stuff, because they're a bit harder to come by. And I'll pass you back over to Jerry, who will go over some examples of previous submissions to get your inspiration flowing.
Great, thanks so much, Louise. That was really good. We've engaged with a number of challenges over the years, and this was just a couple of quick slides showing some of the winners. This was actually the winner of the Homer 2030 competition, which was really an urban community, a self-sufficient living project on a derelict site in the middle of Nottingham. Now my slides won't click again. Yeah, and sorry, this one also does show a selection of the winners of previous challenges, from 11 to 13-year-old girls from Nottingham who won our very first challenges. We've got some of the modular, the 3 metre by 3 metre pods that were built by robots. We've got Rachel's. We've got a social housing project for single parents and their children, again totally self-sufficient, again built on a derelict site. And just a quick slide to show you how these challenges can be rewarding. This was the 3 metre by 3 metre pods that were developed for the Construction Innovation Hub and the Manufacturing Technology Centre, and the brief was for these pods to be built by robotic arms, and the idea being you could start off with your partner with 1 or 2 pods, a studio apartment, and as your family grew you could add pods to it. These were relocatable, but the Construction Innovation Hub put quite a lot of money into the research to develop this, and these lucky students who were HNC students from a college in the Midlands had the privilege and the honour of actually having their winning design developed as a prototype and put on display at UK Construction Week. So in terms of a prize, it was pretty good. We are, as I did mention earlier on, we are also working in Scotland with Twinkle. You may not have heard of Twinkle, but they are creators and resource generators for primary schools. They work across the globe. They're working with us at the moment to look at an architecture and built environment program, and we have used some of our previous challenge winners to develop the videos. We've got a whole range of videos, question sparks, some little challenges on how you can use shoeboxes or cardboard boxes to demonstrate the things we're asking you to build, such as insulate a home, recycle water, rainwater. And this is launching later this month. Really exciting opportunity to involve young people. It's piloting in Scotland, then it's going out to the rest of the world. So there we are. You know, that's MOBIE. We're all about homes. We're all about inspiration, education, and innovation. So thank you very much, and I'll hand back to Kirsty.
Thank you, Jerry and Louise. That was great to hear more about the challenge and a few things to think about when thinking about your challenge. So we're now going to hear from Brian McCarthy, who is Scottish Water's Economic Demand Manager. Having worked in water industry for over 30 years, he is passionate about our precious natural resource and promoting the value of water. In his current role, he is acutely aware of the climate emergency, the need for greater resilience, and the requirements to manage each water demand component more closely. This provides a great opportunity to consider the important link between water and energy, the way we design products, homes and businesses, and to be at the forefront of customer engagement to achieve greater water efficiency. So welcome. Brian, I think we won't get Brian on the screen, but he's going to talk us through his presentation, and I think you're there just now, Brian.
I am. Thanks very much. And can you see my screen first and foremost? Because I'm finding this a bit difficult. I can't see you, but that's good if you can see. So
we can.
Good morning, and thanks for inviting me to support the launch of your first challenge in Scotland. It's a great opportunity. As has been mentioned, I seem to be having a few technical issues, so apologies that you can't see me, but I can assure you I am here. It gives me a great opportunity to talk briefly to a new audience about the value and importance of water and how that fits with this fantastic challenge to design a resource-efficient home. And that can then be used to demonstrate and educate what can be done by others. So, as I say, this is a fantastic opportunity, and thank you for that. It was fairly front and centre in my opening slide, but I'm going to start by saying that water is always worth saving. I will also say that when you look at water and energy together, you start to see a very important link where we can save on both at the same time and support a move to net zero. The future for our environment relies on all of us doing the right thing and changing the way that we've been doing things for so many years. And the way that we use water and impact on the water cycle from source to tap that I've represented in this graphic is no different. The future is in our hands, and this challenge is a great way to think about how we can develop better designs and build things differently to create a future where we take less from the natural environment. And I can't wait to see the great ideas that you come up with as the challenge progresses. So why is it important in Scotland to think about the way that we use water? After all, it supposedly rains all the time. So I just thought I'd bring up a few pictures from a reservoir in Fife. This is Upper Glendevon Reservoir in Fife. It can store a huge amount of water, around about 5 billion litres, as you can see in the picture top left, and it looks fantastic when it's full. But in recent years, we've experienced some extended dry periods, which have had considerable impact on the available storage within that reservoir itself. And you can see in the other photos from 2003, 2018 and 2021 that we have had some fairly serious impacts from drier periods. Now, I've used these pictures for effect, as there's a few other reservoirs downstream in the system that weren't so bad. But last summer, we experienced the driest period in the 160-year record for Scotland, and this was one of the results. So to me, this demonstrates that we need to come together to plan across the board so that we can impact less on the natural environment. So I thought it would help as a takeaway to give some facts and figures, and also some links which will hopefully be put into the chat as I'm going through. And that will help you to think about water use and its value. So let's start with Scottish Water. We only have access to 1% of all the rain that falls on Scotland. We don't have access to every reservoir, loch and river, as some people may think. As individuals, we're all using around about 165 litres of water a day. So that's more than the volume of 550 cans of juice, to put it into some context. And at the height of COVID restrictions, this was more like 200 litres per day for every person and every individual. And that was because we were all spending more time at home. So to help you think about what your family uses, I've dropped a link in one of the bubbles, and it will be put in the chat, to our water use calculator that's found on the Scottish Water website. Take a look at that and see how much you use as a family. It might surprise you, and it might also give you some good ideas where you could make some savings. Another main stat that I always bring out is that the water and wastewater service that we provide and the way that we all use water in our homes accounts for 6% of the UK's total carbon emissions. So that's the equivalent of the aviation industry in the UK. And if I break that down a little bit further, 1% relates to water and the wastewater processes, and then 5% relates to heating water in the home. So it would be great if your designs can change that, save on both water and energy, and help to move towards net zero. And to illustrate that a bit more, 1/5 of an average home energy bill goes towards heating water. So with rising energy prices, it's a good place to save money. So in your designs, think about the fixtures, fittings and appliances that you could use. And I've given some simple examples there of a range of showers that are available to help with that thought process. And I've also dropped another link to our hints and tips section on the Scottish Water website, our water efficiency pages, which also have access to some some fun water use games which might inspire you. And before I move away from this slide, I'll take the opportunity to highlight that Scottish Water have recently become a partner in the 50 Litre Home Coalition. This is a global organisation with many global brands involved, and they're looking to make sustainability irresistible and affordable. And they have the strapline of making 50 litres feel like 500. The 50 Litre Home Coalition was formed in 2020, and their activity is building as the months go on. So I've dropped a link into their website so you can have a look at what they're doing and how they're thinking about future design and education. So to finish off, do you think you can design a home that uses far less water than we do just now? And I'm not going to go through the detail on this final slide, especially the detail to the right-hand side. But again, I thought it would be helpful when thinking about the challenge and your designs. And as the picture says, let's reimagine water use together. So thanks for your time, and thanks for letting Scottish Water get involved. And I can't wait to see your entries. And that's me. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. That was really helpful, and hopefully the audience will find that useful when coming up with their designs. So we're now going to go on to our second poll. So if I can get that poll up just now, that would be great. So what do you think is important when thinking about building design? So how the building looks, its aesthetic, comfort for user, low carbon buildings, and building that will last / durability. So if you submit your answers now, and this is also, I'll just remind you that if you could go in to the handout section and download those handouts before the end of this webinar, that would be great. And we'll just get the answers up in a minute from this poll. Perfect. Oh, so fairly even there. So a bit of a mix of everything. So I think that just shows that all these things will need to be considered when starting the challenge. And so that's great. Thank you for that. I'm now going to welcome back our panelists, and we're going to go through some of your questions just now. So if our panelists could rejoin, thank you. That's great. Just wait for Jerry, and I'm sure Brian will also be there in the background.
Apologies,
Perfect.
I'm here.
No, that's all right. So our first question is, what file formats are the drawings available in? Does anyone want to take that one, Jerry?
Is this the existing drawings?
Yes.
I'm not sure, to be honest. I don't know whether there are, to be honest, existing drawings for this. I think you're referring to the initial retrofit house in Glasgow.
Perfect. Well, what we'll do is we'll, after this webinar, we'll when we email out feedback, we'll come back to that question. So on to the next one.
I can probably add a little bit to it, Kirsty, if you want. Yeah. So because it's a blank site, there was no pre-existing buildings on there. So basically, you will be required to research the site and get your dimensions. And if you can go out and take your measurements or your sketches, and that will be the form of the drawings. And then it'll be up to you to decide what's going to go there. So it's a complete blank slate.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Can drawings be produced in other packages rather than AutoCAD?
Yeah, as far as we can, you can produce your drawings however you like. We don't want to limit your participation in the competition because you haven't got necessary SketchUp, Revit, AutoCAD, or whatever. However you like, we will find a way to accommodate them. It's entirely up to you. No limitations whatsoever. And as I say, if all you've got is pencils and paper, then that's fine by us.
That's perfect, Jerry. There was a few on drawing, so that's really good to know. And then why is the sun path important when designing and thinking about building orientation? Louise, do you want to take that one?
Yep, I can. I'm not an architect, so I don't really look at it from the architecture's perspective on why that might be important. In my experience, you know, the orientation of the building with respect to installing your renewable energy, such as solar panels. You obviously want to expose your panels to as much natural sunlight as possible, and that would normally be in the south-facing direction. But this is things you'll have to consider. You know, you'll have to consider the orientation and position of other buildings. Do they block your south-facing direction? So when I was having a talk about the solar resource, you know, it might not be appropriate for that. So that's things that you'll have to look into.
Just to add to that, I mean, if you're looking at the garden and you're thinking perhaps an outside area or patio doors, we all like to, if possible, face south to maximize the sun. It rises in the east, sets in the west. You don't want your garden or decking or patio area to be north facing. So that's why it's important. It's also important when you're looking at for windows, because you in the summer you do not want to have too much solar gain causing too much heat. And the other thing is not just so much the direction of the sun, it's also worth thinking about where the wind going to come from, because again, placing of doors, particularly if you've got any sliding doors, patio doors, you don't want them facing into the wind, so every time you open the patio doors, everything gets blown to bits inside the house. So the actual movement of the sun, where the wind comes from, where the clouds and rain usually come from, is all very important part of actually, when you're doing your site investigation, site survey, where does everything come from? And help you to kind of orientate your house to the best as you possibly can.
That's great. And we've got one here about budget. Is there a budget? Is that a consideration within this challenge?
Not at this stage. I don't think we're imposing a budget. Obviously, reasonably realistic, but no, we really want this to be a creative challenge. Really exploit your ideas, come up with some great, wonderful stuff. As I've said before with our challenges, often they've been won by very young people because they haven't been limited by constraints about, would this get planning permission? Would this be too expensive? What we're looking for is just passion and creativity. So, and again, for young people, it might be great if you're at university, you're probably involved in costings and budgets and so on and so forth. But no budget restriction on this whatsoever.
Perfect. I've just got another question come in here. So is there a rough floor area requirement for the building and an estimated number of occupants?
Yep, so in the brief, you'll see that the design is for a typical family home. So the floor area that is associated with that would be what you would be expected to kind of align with. But there obviously is some flexibility because this is an innovative design challenge. We don't want to limit you too much. And if there's things that gets through and we have to change at the end, then that's something we could do. But yeah, we're all about the innovation and creativity here.
Yeah, definitely. And another question here is, how many people per design team? Is there a cap on the team size?
No, again, I don't think so. again, I would think probably, I don't know, 4 or 5, probably 6 at the most, because if you have too many, then it's difficult to get to coordinate everything. Somebody doesn't probably get a chance to get so involved. I would think we're looking at probably 4 or 5 per team, but again, it depends on yourselves. If there's more of you and you've got your friends, you've got your class, we aren't going to limit this. But what we probably would say, when you present and you submit the work, it'd be quite nice to see who's done what. Has somebody taken on the design? Has somebody been responsible for looking at the materials? Has somebody taken on the responsibility for the energy? And particularly, when we come to the final presentations, when you come and you're in front of George Clark and the judges, and you're presenting, we would probably want to hear from everybody, how they have contributed and what they've been responsible for. So possibly bear that in mind.
That's great. And I think a last question, maybe Brian, you can answer this. When considering green space, a garden or landscaping, is there anything with kind of Scottish Water that they should be thinking about?
Absolutely, and the first thing I would say is water runoff. So I focused on water use through my presentation today, but we also think very carefully about the impact that we can have on our sewer network in respect of flooding, both internal and external flooding risk. So anything we can do to capture rainwater and flood events on green space and blue-green sort of engineered materials, that's fantastic for us. So think about flooding, and the way that water runs off the site would be another plus point for Scottish Water.
That's great, thank you. And I just had one last one come in there, and it is, how can people find a team to work with? I presume we're encouraging schools, universities, colleges to kind of support the students to come together as teams. Jerry, would that be?
Yeah, I would think so. We would hope the schools, colleges, would say to their class or whatever, who fancies this, and from a class, perhaps a couple of teams. But if you are on your own or you would like to work in a team, I mean, you could just submit on your own. I don't think we're actually saying you've got to be in a team. But we did a previous challenge which relied on multi-college, multi-university teams. So we literally found teams. We made up teams from different institutions. So all I would say is, if you can't, get together with your class or your student mates, you can't form your own team, just get in touch, and we will soon see if we can pair you up with a nearby school, college, or whatever. And if you're looking for somebody, or we want somebody to join our team who might know a bit more about design than we do, or we would like somebody to join us who's knows a bit about more materials or how buildings to get together, just drop us an email and we'll try and answer that one.
That's great. So just wanted to say a big thank you to the audience for joining, and for all your questions, and to the panel for sharing your thoughts and insightful discussion. Your feedback will be used to plan future events and initiatives, so please do complete the feedback form, which we'll send after this webinar. And please do see all the kind of useful links in the chat, and we look forward to seeing all of your designs. Thanks very much.
Thank you, everybody.